five, no debating. Top five, top five, top five.
Top five, Kyle. Top five. Going into week 12, there was a lot of games in week 11 that happened that were like upsets, a lot of shuffling, I would say, at the top of these power rankings after week 11. And we're getting to that point of the season where we're really starting to get a very, very refined list. Who's going to make the playoffs? Who's the more dominant team in divisions? Yada, yada, yada. So obviously one of our favorite segments. And I think I started last week, Kyle. So if you would like to take the start, let's do it.
Yeah, it is one of my favorite segments because we actually put teams in here that other teams don't or other websites don't. ESPN, NFL, all of these other top fives pretty much have the same teams. It might shuffle around a little bit, but we always say that the margin of victory is so small. And I think that the top five should be a little more random than what we see. And I like to credit myself on being ahead of trends before they happen, because anybody can say that a team that's won 4 in a row or 5 in a row is in the top five when you get to that point. But who can tell you who the top 5 team is before it happens? We can. And number 5, I have the Denver Broncos.
No, the Broncos making the top 5 for Kyle.
They are making the top 5, and I really, whether I am dead wrong about this, I do believe it. I really do.
Believe it.
I believe it. Bo Nix was just nominated, his 5th nomination to win Rookie of the Week. He won Rookie of the Month in October. Sean Payton has this offense going. Bo Nix right now is playing better than all of the rookie quarterbacks, including Jaden Daniels, who's kind of regressed since his rib injury. I'm not taking anything away. He's dealing with an injury, but he was much more exciting in the beginning of the year, and they're coming off 2 tough losses.
Yeah.
Now, this Denver team showed me a lot this week because you should have honestly, had Denver made that field goal, would this be so crazy that the team that was at the time the only team to beat the Chiefs, and then they embarrass a playoff contender in Atlanta and shut out Kirk Cousins? I don't know really how bold this is. I know that there's going to be, most people will disagree with it, but I'm going to just make the case that there is 4 quarterbacks right now in the NFL that are leading the league in protecting the football. I'm talking about turnover-worthy plays. It's Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, and Bo Nix, which is crazy. It's 2 rookies.
2 rookies.
So you have a quarterback that is seeing the field really well. Sean Payton is not holding back. The playbook is wide open, and Bo Nix is excelling. And this is actually really fun to watch. And this whole media week has been about, holy crap, Sean Payton was right. That's where we're at right now about Bo Nix. And it's only going to get better. That is the main thing. But I think it's already at a point where, yes, it's going to get better. But if he just stays where he's at right now, it's a top 5 team. Why? Because of our defense. This is the part that people are missing. For whatever reason, the defense doesn't get the same credit that the Steelers gets, that even the Titans passing defense is really good. Sure, they get some credit, but nobody really stops and says, is Denver a top 5 team because of their defense? And I think it's to the point of the season where it's like, okay, maybe they are, because I think they have the best pass rush in the NFL. Okay. Nick Bonito is going crazy right now. Jonathan Cooper is getting after the quarterback. So what do we really have here? We have a shutdown defense that, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Kirk Cousins, you don't give up a single touchdown. That is wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have a defense that can hold these offenses to 1 touchdown or less in an offense that is as good as Bo Nix is right now, I don't see a glaring hole on the team. And my top 5 at this point in the season is probably going to have 5 teams that I believe are getting better as the year is going on and making progress. I think this team is fascinating, and I really don't think anybody, if the playoffs started tomorrow, I don't know who would feel good about playing the Broncos tomorrow. And that is really exciting as a fan. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not a knee-jerk reaction to one game because, like I said, we were coming off a loss. And my final point is whenever you lose a game the way Denver lost, right? A blocked field goal,
Oh,
right?
I feel that. I feel that.
A blocked field goal in Arrowhead, it just felt like there was this barrier we will never get over.
Mm-hmm.
How does an emotional loss like that linger in the locker room, and what does the team look like the next week?
Mm-hmm.
That is what makes this team different than even last year's team. And Sean Payton actually slipped up and said it. He was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is a different team. The way they responded is just different. That they had every reason to be sad, to mope around, to play a close game with Atlanta. And that's not what we saw. We saw the team push Javonte Williams into the end zone. We saw the guys on the
Yeah.
sideline having fun. The Broncos are having fun. They're playing as a team. They actually believe in each other, and it is apparent. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that they can lose a game the way they lost and respond this way
Mm-hmm.
is kind of like the final ingredient that is needed for this team to be in my top 5. I don't know what is going to make me change my mind unless they just start playing bad football. But we're at week 12. This isn't week 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like we have
Yeah.
a good idea who Bo Nix is, who the Broncos are. I think we're at that point where you know what you're going to get, and it's good football. So I have the Broncos at number 5.
Yeah, what you said, right? If you guys last 2 weeks are beating the Chiefs, beating Atlanta, two division leaders, yeah, I would say that's more than enough. Like obviously the blocked field goal hurts, and it's one of those plays that just stings a lot, and you're like, if we only made it, right? Like that's a win. But yeah, two division leaders. If you knock those two guys off in a row, and the way you did it to Atlanta, the Broncos did it to Atlanta. Absolutely, I would. I think right now a lot of like ESPN, CBS, they got Broncos in their top 15. If
Mhm.
they win against the Chiefs last week, yeah, I think it's a top 10 kind of unit. Now, don't get me wrong, the defense is a top 10 unit, top 5 unit, probably a top 3 unit, I would say. And Bo Nix is playing out of his absolute mind with Sean Payton as the head coach. And you mentioned them pushing Javonte into the end zone, and I tweeted it. I was like, this is what a well-coached team
Yeah.
looks like. This is what a team that is playing for each other looks like. So you're getting ahead of it, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I love that you're getting ahead of it with the Broncos because you're right. If the playoffs started tomorrow after the way they handled Atlanta, that's I wouldn't want to play them. If you're the Chiefs, if you're the Bills, if you're anybody in the AFC right now, you're like, I would rather not play the Broncos and wait to play them later on in the
Right.
postseason. So you're right.
And the last thing I'll say is, as fans, we always look at the stats.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, how does his stats compare? Who has more passing yards? But it's important to know that the game plan, it might be totally different. Like for Jaden Daniels, who has a defense not as good as the Broncos, they might
Mm-hmm.
have to throw it 40, 50 times. Now, granted, Bo Nix has more passing attempts than Jaden Daniels. But my point is like, when we played the Saints, we ran the football the entire game because we had 250 yards of rushing.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, oh, Bo Nix had, 160 yards passing in that game. But it's like that wasn't the game plan. So I
Mm-hmm.
think even when you do look at the stats, each game has a story and a game plan. And some of the game plans are about running the football, and you can't really punish the quarterbacks for that. That's
Yeah.
why you really have to kind of look deeper into these rookie quarterbacks instead of just the numbers. You need to see why they had the numbers they had on the weeks that they had. And that's the last thing I wanted to say about that. But yeah, I'm excited about where we're headed right now. 3 winnable games. And it's all about getting ahead of the trend here, because do I think they beat the Browns, Colts, and Raiders? Yes, yes, yes. And all of a sudden, we're talking about a 10-win football team. And I think they'll be probably in a lot of people's top 8.
So Kyle's got the Broncos at 5. For me, at number 5,
Steelers.
I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I knew it.
I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, they haven't moved from last week's top five on my list, at least. And they were able to beat the Ravens, but it was all field goals. Like, Russ didn't look great, and that's that. They were at home and going up against one of the worst pass defenses in the league, in the Ravens. And the Ravens know that. The entire NFL knows that. And you know, credit the Steelers, kind of what you were saying earlier about the defenses. Steelers have a very good defense, and they have won them multiple games back when Justin Fields was the starter, and now as Russ is the starter. So all of that combined, as well as Tomlin being the head coach, like all of that stuff, man, is just it keeps the Steelers up there. They're leading the division now after beating the Ravens. They only have 2 losses on the year. Obviously, those games before this past week in Week 11 with Russ, they were looking great. Russ was looking good. His connection with George Pickens it continually looks better week after week. So with that, leading the AFC North, I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 5.
Yeah, I don't think you can move them. They didn't get worse.
You can't. They didn't get worse. They didn't really get better.
Right, and that's kind of why for me I had Denver there, is because that was actually, I think I saw the 3rd game this year where Broswell had all the points for the Steelers.
Oh, Boswell, yeah.
Boswell. Now their defense is playing at a high level, and they're finding a way to win, so it doesn't really matter how they do it. Yeah. But I am interested in if that's going to come back to bite them eventually.
Yeah, TJ Watt absolutely destroyed Derrick Henry that one play in the backfield. It was sick.
God.
It was sick.
You said Derrick Henry. Oh, yeah. That I didn't see it, but doesn't shock me. Well, at number 4, I have the Los Angeles Chargers.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, the Chargers are another team that I don't think people quite get yet. Okay. First off, you had a defense that was, I don't have the numbers or the research. It felt historical. I think they were giving up 12.9 points at per game, not per half, per game. And it was like week 9 or 10. Yeah. And that is just, I mean, that doesn't happen. And it's really interesting too, because the Chargers were never known in my lifetime for having a good defense. Like, they had a couple years where Sean Merriman, the lights out. I don't know.
Yeah, they were like a top defense for like a year.
I remember. Yeah, they were, I think, number 1 on offense and defense, but they had a losing record.
They had a winning record, but didn't make the playoffs.
That's what it was.
They were like 8-8, 9-7, something like that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But I regress. So the Chargers defense right now is elite. They're playing at an elite level. And I point it out because I point out the Chargers historically not being known for their defense, especially the last 3-4 years, to point out Jim Harbaugh and the difference that he made. Like, he didn't come, we've seen great defensive guys come to a team, and let's say in their first, let's take the Texans, right? Yeah. They were a good team. They won. They made it to the playoffs with DeMeco Ryans, but their passing defense was still like 20 something. This year, it's like up to 12. Like, it takes time in draft picks. And Jim Harbaugh said, to hell with all that time. We're going to be elite now. And we're going to keep all the players we have. Yeah. And we're going to use our first draft pick on the offense, not the defense. And it's still that defense is where. So, like, I look at that defense, and if you would have only told me, right, because I did say this immediately when Jim Harbaugh was hired, I said the culture is different. The term charging is gone. This is a serious problem for Broncos and Chiefs fans. And we should take this very serious because the Chargers are going to be good immediately, not like in October, right away. But they're getting better. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They're getting better because they were winning games, but they didn't really unleash Justin Herbert. They were running the football a lot, and they were holding their opponents to a small amount of points, and they were just, finding different ways each week to get the dub. Now, in the last 3 weeks, I don't know anyone that's playing quarterback as good. I mean, there's a couple, but Justin Herbert is among the best in the league the last 3 weeks. The throws that he's making right now are absolutely incredible. He's running with the football. They try blitzing if the middle of the field's open. He's going on 27, 30-yard runs now.
Yeah, touchdown runs too.
Touchdown runs. You're finally seeing Quentin Johnston really become that wide receiver that he was drafted to be. And Steve Smith, the Hall of Famer from the Panthers, he scouted him and said he is not a year one guy. He's not polished. He doesn't know how to high point the ball. He plays very passive for a big body. But he said if he does get better, he has a huge ceiling in year 2 or year 3. And we're starting to see that actually come to fruition, and he's starting to look good. McConkey, I mean, he had an incredible play. And there was this one play I want to point out where McConkey ran like it was kind of like a simple out route in the corner. He tried to jump it. So that the players, I guess they talk to the coaches, and this is what I love, that communication's happening. And at the very end of the game, they did that same route, knowing that player was going to jump it, and they sent McConkey straight on a vertical. Nice. And that was the big play that got him into field goal range. Like, they're doing the little things right, which is the opposite of what the Chargers have always been. Justin Herbert is a top 5 quarterback in the league, and this defense is incredible. Right now, the Chargers are a very scary team, and everybody's been saying, like, no, if the Broncos are going to make the playoffs, they're going to have to find a way to get a game up on the Chargers. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. The Chargers are not going to give up that number 2 seed or number 2 spot in the division. And there will be 3 playoff teams in the division. But the Chargers right now are, in my opinion, if the Chargers-Chiefs play tomorrow, I got the Chargers. I'm not even questioning it. Yeah. We talked about Steelers not having any offense. You know who else didn't? Do you know the Steelers and the Kansas City Chiefs had the same amount of passing yards last week? 181 passing yards.
Wow.
Right? One team scored no points. The other was supposed to be in a shootout with Josh Allen. That's not what happened. Yeah. So Kansas City, I am very sus about Kansas City and whether they're a good football team or not. I mean, it just screams one and done. We'll see if they can flip a switch like they did last year. But the Chargers are probably going to be the most dangerous team in the division. It's a toss-up right now, but that's why I have the Broncos and Chargers at 5-4.
You heard it. Kyle said he's sus. No, yeah, absolutely. Like, the Chargers are a great example of what great coaching, playing defense, and being able to progress the offense, as the season goes on. That's just a great example of doing all those things under the first-time head coach for that organization, Jim Harbaugh, right? So Chargers are doing great things. I kind of like this contrast here where you're like, hey, I'm putting my top 5 with teams that have not only performed well, but are probably a lot lower on everyone else's power rankings. So I really like that
game on Sunday night was their first game giving up 20 points.
Yeah, they're like, I was looking at the stats right now. They still only give up 14.5 points average this year. And they're
unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
If you go into the playoffs and your opponent scores 14.5, you're probably going to win.
Yeah. Especially with Justin Herbert as quarterback.
It's a serious problem.
Oh, yeah. So Kyle's got the Chargers at 4. My number 4 team is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs.
Ooh, okay.
One loss team. They got
I
their
get it.
first loss. Yeah,
I get
week
it.
11. And I still have to keep the respect with the Chiefs. They are 3-time champions, defending 2-time champions, going into this year. And for all their flaws so far on the offense, especially on the offense, they were still able to manage a 9-0 record up until they met the Bills just this past week. And they ran into an MVP candidate in Josh Allen, and a Bills team that has looked really, really good after all the offseason talk. So I still got to give the Chiefs respect. I talked about them last week about them, blocking that field goal for of the Broncos and just being like, that's a team when you block that field goal. And I said the same thing about the Packers. That wants that win more, that wants to win for their coach, that wants this, that wants that. There's that unity there. And even though it was a loss, like, they're still 9-1. They're still the Chiefs. It's still Patrick Mahomes. It's still Andy Reid. Like you said, right? Like, can they kind of flip that switch in the playoffs and really kind of going forward for the rest of the season after their first loss of the year? I think they can. I think they absolutely can. And going this long without a loss and then finally losing, it's almost like, whew, okay, we got past that. Now let's just fucking go out there and play ball, right? Like, yeah, we got the Chargers, we got the Broncos threatening in the division, but we more than likely, all three of these teams are going to make it from the AFC West for the playoffs this year. So the Chiefs, they're still going to play how they've been playing. Hopefully, at least for Chiefs fans and the Chiefs, they want to play a little bit better on the offensive side of the ball, and be able to go into the playoffs either with number 1 seed or at least a home game. But yeah, I got to give respect to the Chiefs after week 11, even after a first loss. For me, they're still in my top 5. I got them at number 4.
I know you. I get what you're. I get it. I do. It's just. It wasn't just Josh. You mentioned like he ran into an MVP quarterback in Josh Allen.
Yeah.
But and also like you got to remember that there are games. The Tampa Bay game comes to mind where Mahomes threw for like 3 touchdown passes and over 300 yards.
Yeah.
So those games are sprinkled in there.
Yeah.
There's just these other games like the week before last week where Bo Nix outplayed Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead.
Yep.
So yeah, but I mean the Chiefs are the most trustworthy team in the NFL. So I totally get it. At number 3, I got the Eagles.
All right.
I got the Eagles at number 3. I think I had them at 3 last week as well.
Let me double check. You had them. No, you did not.
Okay.
Number 2.
Had them at 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to put them at 3. I thought the offense was kind of, there's still something to be desired. It's just, I think people at home are waiting for the 2022 Eagles offense. And I think we just kind of have to come to terms with that is not really this offense. That's not what they're going to be about. They're going to run the football with Saquon Barkley, and they're going to, sure, like Jalen Hurts is going to do his tush push at least once, and get 1 rushing touchdown a game.
For old time's sake.
A.J. Brown's going to make plays when they need him to. Devontae Smith is going to make plays. They're here because of the defense, and this defense is serious. They have quietly just continued to get better, and nobody's noticing it. No one's talking about it. Sure, when they're doing an Eagles recap, they're talking about it, but that's it. Outside of talking about the game the Eagles were in that week, no one's really talking about it. Like, this should be a story in itself, the Eagles defense. I mean, their last 3 games, they've given up 15 points. That is an average of their last 3 games. That's incredible. You're giving up about 2 touchdowns. And Vic Fangio, he's got this defense totally bought in. He left Miami. They asked him why he left Miami, and he said, I can't coach players that have, Miami Beach clubs and all these other attractions. I need to be in a city like Philly where it's all about football. And
all the girls are ugly.
All the girls are ugly. They wear multiple layers. But in all reality, like, I understand what he's saying because I've lived in a place like Green Bay and I've lived in Miami, and it's totally different. In
Picking
one,
Miami every time.
yeah, well, yeah, it depends what we're talking about. If I'm a head
Yeah.
coach, I pick Green Bay every time,
Mm-hmm.
because that's all they have. Like,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's what the whole state is about. And for Philly, they have kind of got this identity of like, we're, the brotherly love, we're a tough football team, and it's actually working in their favor. I feel like they're leaning into it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not so much that we're trying to get 30, 40 points a game and we just can't do it. It's that that's not really the plan going into the games anymore.
Yep.
We have a defense now, and we have the best running back in the NFL. That's
Mm-hmm.
the actual plan, which happens to be the best formula for January success. So Philly, I mean, they have 2 losses on the season.
Mm-hmm.
And since they've become an improved team, especially on the defense, oh my gosh, they're so good right now.
Yeah.
Cooper DeJean, he
Quinion
is
Mitchell.
playing really good. And Quinion Mitchell,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I said it last week, but I can't say it enough. Like, those 2 additions are crazy for the Eagles right now. I can't
Yeah.
believe they got them both. If the Eagles continue to keep playing, they have some tough games coming up. I think they play the Ravens in a couple weeks. I think 2 weeks from now, we're gonna really find
Yep.
out what the Eagles are. And I think the Eagles are going to end up winning these games. And then you're going to see everybody throw the Eagles up into the top 5. Once again, we're ahead of it.
Yeah. 100%. And for me at number 3, I've also got the Eagles. I've got the Eagles at number
Whoa, and
3 as well.
agree.
We're in agreement.
I
We're
thought
in
you were moving
agreement.
on. I was like, wow, he doesn't even want to talk about it.
and it's a lot of what you said is the same reason. Now we've also got to remember too, these guys are in a 6-game win streak. They've got a top 10 scoring offense and a top 10 scoring defense. But to your point too, like, they're not lighting it up. They're not scoring 35 plus. AJ Brown 2 touchdowns, Jalen Hurts a rushing touchdown, Saquon Barkley 150 plus rushing yards. Maybe the Saquon part, right? But it's true. The defense is what's kind of really, really dominating in a lot of these games, and especially in the 6-game stretch. I mean, 26-18 against the Commanders, with those final 8 points for the Commanders kind of coming in garbage time. 6 points of that to the Cowboys. 23 against the Jaguars, which is a little weird. But then the Bengals a few weeks ago, only 17 points. Like, they are, outside of the Jaguars game, they're taking a lot of these quarterbacks who are doing pretty well or are like top tier quarterbacks, and they're calming them down during these games. And again, it's credit to Vic Fangio and his defense. And on top of that, they're dominating their division. Now, the Washington Commanders are the only other team in the NFC East that matter, and they were able to beat them 26-18. They were able to beat them by 8, but again, it was that garbage time touchdown at the end for
It
the
looked
Commanders.
easy too.
Sorry?
It looked easy. Like, I watched the game, and it just never really felt like the Eagles were at risk of losing it.
Yep.
Even though it didn't feel like they were playing their best football, which is
Yeah.
kind of alarming.
Yeah, 100%. It doesn't look like at any point they are in danger of losing this. And this is coming off of a 2-2 start where, Philly, city of brotherly love, they can turn on the coach like that, and they did. And then what happened? They go on a 6-game win streak, and all those rumblings, all that stuff we made fun of Nick Sirianni about, pretty much out the door, because you got them on a 6-game win streak. You got Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown and Saquon Barkley like looking amazing. Vic Fangio's defense is finally dominating and kind of with what you were expecting going into this year, and you're dominating the division. Like, as a fan, there's nothing else you could ask for. Like, you're leading the division, you're beating your division opponents pretty well. You got a top 10 defense, top 10 offense, and that's why the Eagles are number 3.
And averaging 30 points a game in their last 3.
Insanity, dude. They're good.
Yeah, they're just a well-rounded team right now. No weakness. Number 2. I got the Buffalo Bills.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo is going to be my number 2 for my 1 and 2 aren't changing.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah.
Um, that's how you know you got it right. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing about Buffalo that you don't like. Their
Mm-hmm.
defense, like I said, they are extremely underrated. They don't get the credit that they deserve. They held Mahomes to the same amount of passing yards Russell Wilson had. I mean, this is a very good defense, and they're not really mentioned in the same breath as some of these other defenses. I like Buffalo's defense, but I really got to give my game ball here to Sean McDermott because he is just like after what happened last year, where they
Mm-hmm.
were 6-6 after losing to Denver and they fired their
Mm-hmm.
offensive coordinator,
Mm-hmm.
and he rallied that team back. They went on a huge win streak, made it to the playoffs, and what they ended up losing to the Ravens, I think, or
I believe so. I
no,
can't
it was the
remember.
Chiefs, right? I think
No,
it was the Chiefs.
they lost to the Chiefs again. I'm pretty sure.
I think it was
Yeah.
Chiefs, Bills, and
Yeah.
then the Ravens played the Texans. I think in the
Yes, and
divisional
then
round.
it was Ravens Chiefs AFC Championship.
Yeah,
Yep.
but like by week 12, the Bills were not even in the play. People didn't think they were going to make the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
and that's coaching. You could,
Mm-hmm.
like I said about the loss to the Chiefs, the way a team responds when their back's against the wall says everything you need to know about the character and of the locker room. And you can lose games, you can't lose the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo showed that they had just that kind of makeup. That's
Mm-hmm.
championship makeup.
Mm-hmm.
Now they did lose to the Chiefs, but going into this season, they lose Stephon Diggs, and it's like, okay, what are they going to look like? And you could tell for a couple of weeks there they were figuring it out. Josh
Yeah.
Allen started the season hot, but they lose 2 in a row. I think week 3 and week 4 to the Texans. They lost bad to the Texans and the Ravens, I think. And those
Yeah.
are like really tough opponents.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, they haven't lost one football game. And if you're the Ravens or the Texans, you got to be thinking, I'm glad we played them when they were figuring it out
Yeah.
in week 2 or week
Oh
3,
yeah.
because if that game happened now, I'm taking Buffalo over both of those teams.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo, as far as the Super Bowl goes, they've never had this good of a look at it because they are the best team in the AFC and they continue to get better. Now, everybody, when it comes to sports betting, what they try to do is they try to get out on a team. They try to figure out, okay, what game is it where they're going to lose,
Struggle,
but the
lose. Yeah.
public is going to think they're just going to keep winning. And there's been like 3 games in a row now where the public has been like, this is the game. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be the Cardinals, or it's going to be the Chiefs, or like they're going to come back to earth against the Colts. Something weird's
Mm-hmm.
going to happen. And they just keep winning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, there's not even that like hiccup of a
Yeah.
game somewhere sprinkled in there. I think that's pretty remarkable because the NFL is so tough. And for it's same thing with the Eagles. To win that many games in a row is really, really challenging. So and it's the way they're winning it too. So
Yeah.
I think Buffalo should be thinking about the playoffs or the Super Bowl, and Josh Allen should probably win MVP this year.
My number 2 is also the Bills. I've got the Bills at number 2, and I'm pretty sure we know who number 1 is. But speaking on the Bills, you talk about how many games they're winning. And you mentioned how hard it is in the NFL to win. And it is. The even crazier part is that out of these 6 games, they have scored 30 points in 5. The only one they haven't scored 30 points in was that first game out of the 6-game win streak was against the Jets. They only scored 23. That was after the loss against the Ravens, I believe. No, I'm sorry, the Houston Texans. They had scored 20, scored 23 against the Jets, and it has been 30 plus every single game since. And they're on a 6-game win streak. Josh Allen is a clear-cut MVP candidate. If it's not Lamar, it's him. This defense, like you said, is very underrated. The coaching staff has done really, really well. You go back into last year, right? You talk about the offensive coordinator being, fired, and then I forget his name right now, but the offensive coordinator Curley is coming in, and he's done nothing but a great job. And the
Brady?
Bills went
Joe Brady?
Joe Brady, Joe Brady, yeah. It's been they were dead. Then they won the division. They lost in the playoffs, but then they come into this year 3-0. They lose 2, and then they go on a 6-game win streak. It's just the Bills are just so damn good, and they continue their dominance against the Chiefs to cap off a 6-game win streak so far this past week with that dub in against the Chiefs. And Josh Allen, we talked about him earlier, just ripping off these 30-yard runs for touchdowns is just incredible. When your number one receiver is Khalil Shakur, and there's nothing bad on him. It's just you went from Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis to Khalil Shakur, Keon Coleman, who's a rookie and who was out, Dalton Kincaid, who was out, Dawson Knox, who left mid-game, and you've got Khalil Shakur as your number one, and that's kind of like you're still able to score 30-plus points. Like, that is Josh Allen, that is the coaching, and that is how much this team wants to keep winning, win the division, and knowing that they have a very, very good shot at the Super Bowl. I agree. They should be thinking Super Bowl. So my number 2 is the Bills. Kyle?
Yeah. Well, the last thing I'll say about the Bills, too, that I mentioned last week was that Buffalo has just always been that team where it was like Josh Allen had to be Superman and put the team on his back. And you're like, yeah, Shakir's not as good as Stephon Diggs, but they don't need to do what they used to have to do to win.
And
now
that
they have
stress is gone too.
It's gone. And then when you ask him to be Superman, he can put on his cape and go on a 30-yard rushing touchdown to beat the Chiefs like he did in that game. And it's like, but that's not all they are anymore. Those moments are just like the cherry on top right now.
Exactly.
So it's really, really cool. But yes, our number 1 is probably going to be a different team, I'm thinking.
1, 2, 3.
Lions.
The Lions at number 1. They're inevitable. Kyle, go ahead.
Yeah, the Lions are definitely number 1. I mean, you look at the Lions, so it's 2024 right now. Okay. Just take a step back and look at this, because the way the Lions have built this team, it's not the Rams. They didn't buy a Super Bowl. And it's kind of like working out. If you take steroids, you get fast gains, but if you stop taking it, you lose them really fast too. If you do something naturally, it'll actually take a lot longer to die off. Now, the Lions have built their team organically through drafting. They have actually put themselves in a situation where they have a shit ton of cap money next year. They were able to secure Jared Goff, Penny Sewell, and Amon-Ra St. Brown at reasonable prices. They have their core people. They are well coached. They are the perfect team right now. They are the most complete roster in sports. They have a great balance of young rookies, young players, and veterans. They are the perfect team. And when you look at this journey that they went on, they were always kind of getting better, we felt like, since they lost or beat the Packers week 18 in Lambeau to knock the Packers out of the playoffs. That was 2022. And we said, the Lions are about to turn a corner. And that year, they were 32nd in the league when it comes to opponent yards per game. That's why they kept losing. And I remember saying, if the Lions just go from 31, 32 to 15, they're going to win a lot of games. And they did. They went on like a 6-game winning streak, and they brought their defense to 15. And then in 2023, it was like the offense was doing pretty well. And then the defense finally found a way to start doing their part, but there was still like a lot to be desired. They were 23rd in the league. So it was like still, that was last year, 23rd.
Yep.
And now here we are in 2024, and the Detroit Lions are 13th in yards. And that's just really scary, because last year people were like, Detroit, they could go to the Super Bowl. Now
Mhm.
this year, you have a situation where the defense has gone in 2 years from the worst in the league in yards to a borderline top 10 defense while scoring 33.6 points per game
Yep.
on average, number one in the NFL. They've
Mhm.
scored 52 points on Sunday. I think 2 weeks before that, they scored 51. They are crazy. They are bullies right now. If
Mhm.
you are going into Detroit like the Jaguars did without Trevor Lawrence,
Mhm.
it was like the spread could have been 20 points and people would have still took the Lions in the points
It was
because
a slaughter, dude.
it was a slaughter.
Yeah.
Detroit right now, I don't know how anybody is going to stop them. They are the best team in the NFL. They've been the best team of the NFL all season long. There's
Mhm.
no weaknesses about them. They have playoff experience now, which would be the one thing that you would say, well, maybe, nope. They won playoff games last year. Jared Goff's
Mhm.
been to a Super Bowl. There's nothing. Jared Goff has more games. What was this stat? Holy crap. Jared Goff has what was it? It was
More
like
balls.
he has 3 or 4 games this year where he has more touchdown passes than incompletions.
Yeah, that was I do remember that. I do remember seeing that. Isn't that crazy to have a quarterback who from the Rams was basically like, "Hey, thanks. See ya." And then you go to the Lions where I thought and I feel like a lot of people were thinking the same thing. It was he was going to be a placeholder for the next quarterback that they were going to draft. And look at him just leading the Detroit Lions with Dan Campbell as head coach to a playoff season last year, playoff season this year, a number one scoring offense, a top 5 defense, and we're talking about games where he's got more touchdowns and incompletions this season. And they're scoring 50 plus in 2 games, 30 plus in every other game. It
Yeah,
seems like it's just ridiculous,
they're
dude.
perfect.
The Lions are the best. The lines are perfect. And
You could sum it all up with just this. The last 2 weeks tell the whole story. 5 interceptions against the Texans week 10, the Lions won.
yep.
The next week, a perfect passer rating against the Jaguars also won. Like, that's how good the Lions are. They can
Mm-hmm.
overcome 5 interceptions and win that game against a playoff team, a team that just went toe to toe with the Chargers. Wait, no,
Yep.
that's a different team. Wait, no, that was Texans. Yeah.
It's the Texans, yeah.
So the line, I mean, that's really like all you need to say that the
Mm-hmm.
Lions, I mean, it's their best start since 1934.
Oh, wow.
So
Insane.
if have you have nobody alive that was there for this,
Mm-hmm.
right? They would be 90 years old. I don't have anybody in my life that's 90. But if you do, good job. Ask them if they remember the Lions being 10-0.
Hey, Grandpa, when's the last time the Lions started off this out? Well, the year was 1934.
It's absolutely remarkable. I mean, Goff
Yeah.
has had at least 400 yards passing while maintaining a perfect passer rating twice. Think about that. Maintaining a perfect passer rating usually implies that the quarterback threw it 20
Mm-hmm.
times and maybe went
Mm-hmm.
20 for
Mm-hmm.
24 for 220 yards. No, he's throwing it for over 400 passing yards, which says that he's throwing it a lot, which means it is
Insane.
crazy to have a perfect passer rating when you have
Insane.
30, 40 attempts. And this is the 5th time this season he's had a completion percentage of at least 80 in a game.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most by a player in a single season in NFL history.
Yep.
Never happened. Not one time. Um, with the minimum being 15 passing attempts, which Goff is going over that every single game. So,
Every time. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, we just talked about Josh Allen, but like, there is a very strong case to be made. And I remember us debating this last year where I was like, Jared Goff I think I was like, he's a top 10 quarterback, or we got into some kind of disagreement about it.
Mm-hmm.
Jared Goff, I don't know why, but even with the year he's having, and I fault myself. I just said Josh Allen is going to win it. No questions asked. Why no questions? Why no questions?
Jared Goff has a couple questions.
Yeah, and we should. Like,
Yeah.
Jared Goff has put up these eye-popping statistics every single week while leading his team to the best record, tied for the first with the Chiefs, best record in the NFL. And the way they're winning is way more impressive than the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we talking about here? Why wouldn't the
Yeah.
quarterback of that team that's breaking all these records be an MVP? Is there something I'm missing, or is Jared Goff just not flashy enough? Is he too much of a pocket quarterback to get that kind of recognition? He's not as elusive as Lamar Jackson. I mean, I don't get it. I really don't. Jared Goff, he's just not like, for instance, I told somebody today, why is everybody so sure Ben Johnson's leaving? I said that to you yesterday. I was like, you're not even going to float the possibility that Ben Johnson's like, I want maybe to be a part of a dynasty. And somebody, this was on X, somebody said, dynasty, LOL. And I'm like, wait, what's so funny about that? Look at the way the Lions have built this team.
Mm-hmm.
Is Jared Goff not good enough to win multiple Super Bowls in the next couple of years with this team? Nobody seems to think he is good enough to do that. I don't know why, though.
That's a crazy thing, because we've seen how long Peyton, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers, and you know, assuming that Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, all these guys are going to go well into their 30s. Jared Goff is going to do that, and to laugh at the fact that they may be a dynasty, I don't know if you can do that right now because of how well the Lions are playing. And, you know, you asked about look at how the Lions were built. Jared Goff, throwaway quarterback from the Rams. David Montgomery, throwaway running back from the Bears. They got criticized for selecting Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, in the first round. They brought in a first-round Penei Sewell. They brought in the hometown kid, Aiden Hutchinson, which very rarely works out, was when you bring the hometown guy in and he becomes a star. But he's a star.
Yeah.
And you bring in the head coach who, you know, we made fun of him, or maybe not made fun of him, but poked fun at how much he would cry. And we liked it, though. And we did. And then, like, his second year, I was already saying, oh, he's gone. He's gone as a coach because he had lost 4 in a row or something like that. And look what they've done. They have literally built, or are on the verge of building, a dynasty with Jared Goff, with Jahmyr Gibbs, Montgomery, Penei Sewell, with Aiden Hutchinson as your hometown guy on the defensive end, who, again, unfortunately got injured, but could have been defensive player of the year, and that head coach. It's the Lions are, you said earlier, they are one of those teams that built everything from the ground up. And now, 4 years later, right? Or 3 years later, whatever it was, it's looking like, oh shit, this is how you got to do it. The Chiefs did it the same way. And they're on that path. You know, the Patriots did it a similar way. They brought in free agents and stuff, but for the most part, it was like Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Teddy Bruschi, Vrabel. All these guys were drafted or brought in after their rookie year, whatever it is, or rookie contract, and they were built to last. And that's exactly what the Lions are doing, and that's exactly why the Lions are the number 1 team in the NFL.
And the move to people question it, like, why would you let TJ Hawkinson walk? But then they drafted Sam Laporta.
Yeah.
They know the players that they need to pay, and they know the ones that they can let walk. And Penei Sewell, like you said, all those players are under contract for the next 4 or more years. So the window right now for a Super Bowl is the next 4 or 5 years, at least, at a minimum. And like,
you know, they're going to give
a great point with Jared Goff not being a mobile quarterback. He's a pocket quarterback, and he's my age. Like, I still, like, I feel good. I don't feel like if I was a professional athlete, I don't feel like I would be worried about not being able to play at a high level for 4 more years. So, I mean, he's only 30. He just turned 30. So, I mean,
Yeah.
this window is absolutely wide open. And everything the Lions have done in the last 4 weeks have been without Aiden Hutchinson, which is like, wow.
Yeah, the defense is the top 5 unit. I think they're number 5 in like points per game allowed. Obviously, going into the yards and all that, they're probably still a top 5 unit. But as we have said on this podcast multiple times, as long as the Bengals have Burrow, as long as the Bills have Josh Allen, as long as insert team name, insert quarterback have these guys, they are a playoff Super Bowl contender. As long as Jared Goff is on the Lions, they're a Super Bowl contender. And what he's done with the Lions ever since he got over here, I forget the stat. We talked about it last year. I think it was like week 7 or something. And I was like, in 16 games, this guy has had a ridiculous completion percentage, this many yards, this many touchdowns versus interceptions. Jared Goff was on a tear, on an absolute tear. And he starts this season, and the Lions just continue to be dominant.
Yeah.
Do you got anything else on the Lions?
Yeah, the very last thing is the last 3 games without Aiden Hutchinson. On the season, the Lions, like you said, top 5 defensively in points allowed, 17.7. The 3 games that they've just played without Aiden Hutchinson, 14.3.
Aiden must be loving it. Like, I'm sure he wants to be out there, but he must be like, that's my defense. That is my defense right there. There's our top 5s down there on the ticker, everybody. Hopefully you guys enjoyed them. And if you disagree, let us know in the comments. Other than that,
Top 5, no debating. Top 5, top 5, top 5.